All right, welcome everyone. Today, we are diving headfirst into an explainer covering one of the most intricately constructed systems I think we've ever seen, the Dreamweaver universe. Seriously, if you're someone who absolutely loves deep, rule-based lore, the kind where the actual mechanics of magic are completely tied to the laws of nature, and quite frankly, the laws of morality, then you are in for a massive treat today. It's like a giant puzzle where everything connects, and we are going to unpack this brilliant universe together.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our tactical syllabus for the explainer today. First up, the 7 dominant elements. Second, extrasensory perception. Third, mastering zone control, followed right up by enhancing and capturing those zones. And finally, we'll zoom all the way out to look at ecosystem roles and energy.
Section 1. The 7 dominant elements.
Now, it is absolutely crucial to understand right from the start that in this universe, elements are not merely ammunition. They aren't just literal fireballs to be thrown in a physical battle. Sure, they have physical properties, but they actually dictate the fundamental morality of the people who wield them. Every single element has a physical property, known as a geoproperty, and a profound spiritual duality, known as a deoproperty. And that deoproperty is split between a specific virtue and a specific vice. Let's really think about this for a second. Take fire, for example. The physical geo-trait of fire is, obviously, combustion. It burns. But its moral virtue? That's fortitude. And that virtue is constantly in a tug-of-war, battling its complete opposite vice, which is cowardice. So wielding fire isn't just about heat, it's about inner courage. Or, take light. Physically, light grants vision. It illuminates the dark. But spiritually, it represents truth, standing in direct opposition to the vice of deception. So mastering any of these 7 elements, fire, wind, earth, time, water, lightning, or light, is this incredible, profound moral balancing act. You can't just be physically strong, you have to be spiritually aligned.
Section 2. Extrasensory perception.
So, now that we kind of understand the internal and moral traits of these elements, we need to look at how wielders take that internal power and project it outward into the world. By tapping into their specific elements, wielders can massively expand their basic human senses. We're talking about extrasensory perception, or ESP. Each element gifts the user a highly unique lens to view reality. For instance, the time element grants what's called foresight. This literally allows the user to read environmental triggers to predict future events before they even happen. Lightning? That allows you to actually see elementary particles and their oscillating frequencies. It's like having a microscopic quantum vision. And then there's water, which grants depth perception. This isn't just seeing far away, it's the fascinating ability to explore deeper realities that are just totally hidden behind everyday, mundane concepts.
To really grasp how these senses are actually utilized in practice, we have to look at this brilliant training session between the character Concordia and her mother. They're discussing the wind element, specifically its proximal zone perception, and how to overcome sensory blind spots. Her mother explains it beautifully. She says the technique is like utilizing a telescope that is already present in nature. If an obstacle such as a tree blocks the line of sight, it becomes useless. Basically, what she's saying is that any blind spots Concordia experiences aren't failures. They're just areas where the wind's wavelength differs from what she is currently synced up to. So how does she fix it? She doesn't just push harder or strain her eyes. She simply shifts her frequency. She syncs to alternate elemental wavelengths right there in her environment to find a brand new proverbial telescope. It's all about adaptability.
Let's pivot and contrast that wide-sweeping aerial view of wind with water's extrasensory capability, which we touched on earlier, depth perception. This whole concept is all about discovering the hidden within the seemingly mundane. Think about how humans naturally operate. When we are exposed to the same information over and over again, we inevitably hit a mental barrier. We get bored, right? We just take the information for granted and stop looking closely. But depth perception is the magical ability to push completely past that initial boredom. By intentionally remaining fascinated, the observer just stares at common, everyday information until deeper realities, manifold depths of profound knowledge, literally begin to unravel right in front of their eyes.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly how this concept is put into practice. There's this amazing moment where Concordia's father challenges her to find a box hidden at the absolute bottom of a deep lake, but with a massive catch. She cannot dive in. Step 1. She hits a wall of immense frustration. She's staring at the water for days, completely blocked by her own assumptions about what is and isn't possible. Step 2. A fish washes ashore and it's struggling to breathe. Her father tells her to think like a fish, reminding her that water is essentially the fish's air. Then, step 3, the eureka moment. It hits her. Concordia realizes that water is literally composed of hydrogen and oxygen gases. There is literally air suspended within the water itself. By syncing her wavelength to those specific gases inside the lake, she immediately gains full, crystal-clear vision of the lake's entire expanse and retrieves the prize with ease. Just a simple, profound shift in perspective makes an impossible task completely trivial.
Section 3. Mastering Zone Control. When multiple magic wielders actually clash, the fight isn't just a brawl. It's a battle over the terrain itself. And this terrain is governed by the concept of an ecosystem's healthy state. I want you to think of an ecosystem, or a nation, or a kingdom, exactly like you would think of a human body. They all have a baseline healthy state. This state is an ideal, collective balance that is maintained by the interactions of all the living organisms within it. But crucially, it is maintained by a strict respect for boundaries. When this healthy state is functioning perfectly, all those boundaries create a collective mood. The lore calls this an atmosphere. So in combat, this atmosphere is exactly what the native species are desperately trying to defend, and it's exactly what hostile invading forces are trying to tear down.
Which leads us to a fascinating ideological war. On one side, we see offensive zone control. This is the tactic of the invasive species, essentially playing the role of a pathogen. And the primary weapon here, which is used heavily by the villainous Weaver of Calamity, is stealth. The entire goal is to secretly penetrate those boundaries we just talked about, assassinate the sentries in the shadows, and disrupt that healthy atmosphere to cause a literal disease within the ecosystem. On the flip side, we have defensive zone control. This is the tactic of the native species, championed by our heroes, the Dream Knights. Their primary weapon isn't brute force, it's that extrasensory perception. They aren't just aimlessly looking for enemies. They are actively scanning the overall healthy state of their territory to detect the slightest anomalies. It creates this incredibly high-stakes, magical cat-and-mouse game where victory is determined entirely by who controls the atmosphere.
Section 4. Enhancing and capturing zones.
So how exactly do warriors manipulate this terrain? Well, they utilize support class techniques. Listen, in this universe, relying solely on your own brute strength is a massive rookie mistake. True masters manipulate the battlefield itself. The first method to do this is through field enhancement techniques. This revolves entirely around boosting your allies by fundamentally altering the terrain around them. You aren't just casting a buff on the fighter, you are literally changing the ground they stand on. For example, if you have an ally with a fire affinity, a support wielder can infuse the surrounding terrain with wind. Because those elements are compatible, this fusion dramatically amplifies the fire user's abilities, upgrading their standard elemental output into a massive raging storm. It's all about creating these massive environmental synergies.
Conversely, if you want to ruin your enemy's day, you use zone capture. This is a field restriction technique, and its entire design is to make the battlefield completely uninhabitable for your opponent. When you're facing a truly powerful adversary, you don't necessarily want to attack them directly. That's too risky. Instead, you strip them of two major sources of strength. First, mobility, how easily they can navigate the region. And second, range, how much magical influence they can actually exert over that territory. If they can't move and they can't reach you, they can't win.
So the crucial point is exactly how you achieve this zone capture. How do you strip their mobility and range? You use nullifiers. Nullifiers are antithetical elements introduced directly into the terrain that act as violent, direct repellents against the enemy's specific affinities. It's basic physics applied to magic. If an invading enemy specializes in fire, what do? You completely saturate the terrain with water. If they rely heavily on darkness, you flood the entire zone with blinding light. This physically repels the enemy, forcing a rapid, chaotic retreat. It cuts off their mobility and shrinks their range down to nothing. And honestly, here is the absolute kicker of this whole strategy. According to the lore, the terrifying army of the Weaver of Calamity has absolutely zero resistance to this specific tactical maneuver. None. It is their ultimate weakness.
Section 5. Ecosystem Roles and Energy.
For our final segment, we are going to zoom all the way out to the absolute macro level of this universe. We're going to examine how entire global environments are structured around life forms that are uniquely tasked with distributing energy. The lore provides this wonderfully comprehensive taxonomy. It classifies literally every living organism into one of 8 ecosystem classes. We have atmospheric regulators. These are your plants and microorganisms managing climate and metabolism. Then we have pathogens, symbiotes, herbivores, carnivores, omnivores, scavengers, and finally, resource managers. And what's amazing is that these 8 interconnected roles don't just sustain biological life, they act as a profound, undeniable mirror for human behavior.
Let's compare two of the most fascinating classes on that list, pathogens and symbiotes. At their core, both are fundamentally parasitic forces. They both absolutely require a host organism to survive. However, their methods for survival are complete and utter opposites. Pathogens drive evolution through brutal stress and disease. They infect, they tax the system, and they kill off the weak, ensuring that only the highly adaptable can survive the onslaught. Symbiotes, on the exact other hand, drive evolution through augmentation. They provide their host with massive, mutual, codependent benefits. Think about gut bacteria aiding in human metabolism, or root bacteria protecting plants from pests. One force evolves the world through trauma, and the other evolves it through teamwork.
Then we have the incredibly delicate three-step balance of the food chain. Step 1. Herbivores harvest plant energy. They are absolutely vital for trimming overgrowth so that sunlight can actually reach the forest floor. But without management, their overgrazing would quickly strip the earth and turn it into a barren wasteland. Step 2. Enter the carnivores. Carnivores aren't just villains. They act as the vital managers of those herbivores, calling their populations to prevent complete environmental collapse. And then, step 3. Omnivores balance the entire system out. By consuming both the plants and the smaller, fast-breeding carnivores, omnivores minimize the overarching stress to the ecosystem. They are the ultimate stabilizing regulators.
And of course, we cannot forget the scavengers. They get a bad reputation and are often totally overlooked, but they are the crucial cleanup crew of the world. They consume decaying matter and return it to its basic elements. Without scavengers, pathogens would just multiply uncontrollably on the decay. The lore actually brilliantly notes that real-world ancient cultures revered scavengers. They knew that a prolonged absence of scavengers in an area wasn't just some random quirk of nature, no. It was a terrifying blaring omen of an impending apocalyptic epidemic. They are literally the shield keeping plague at bay.
Finally, we have the resource managers. These are highly unique species that physically alter the terrain around them to allocate resources for the greater good of the ecosystem. Think of elephants in the wild. They literally bulldoze old, diseased trees to make way for fresh new growth, and they physically lead other herds to hidden water sources during a massive drought. Or think about beavers, felling trees to build these massive, complex dams, completely controlling the flow of water in a forest. By manually manipulating their environment, these managers prevent famines and dictate the survival of literally all life residing downstream from them.
Now, what's really interesting about all of this is what happens during Concordia's training. She learns a profound truth that acts as the philosophical core of this entire universe. All of these incredible fantasy ecological rules aren't just cool magic systems for battles. They are a perfect, intricate mirror for human character and societal interaction. Everything we just talked about applies to us too.
And that brings us to the end of our journey today. I want to leave you with a profound question to ponder as we wrap up this explainer. Looking at this incredibly deep, rule-based lore we just unpacked, which of the 8 ecosystem roles do you play in your own society? Seriously, think about it. Are you an atmospheric regulator, keeping the peace in your friend group? Are you a symbiote, constantly boosting your allies? Or maybe you're a resource manager, paving the way for others to succeed. It's a really fascinating lens through which to view our own world. I hope you've absolutely enjoyed this deep dive and that it leaves you eager to learn more. Until next time, keep exploring.